Okay, in this video, we're going to be solving equations with variables on both sides. So I'm going to have all my steps on the left, and let's go ahead and look at number 5. So for number 5, it says we have 7x minus 11, and this equals negative 19 plus 3x. So for step 1, it tells us we want to move the smaller variable to one side. So we look here, and we have 7x and 3x. Well, 3 is smaller than 7, so I want to move 3x over to the left side. Now, right now, 3 is being added, 3x is being added. So to move it over to the other side, I want to undo addition, so that means I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So my 3's cancel out on this side, and I'm left with 7x minus 3x, which is 4x. And then I'm just going to bring everything else down. So minus 11 equals negative 19. So now we want to move our constants to the other side. So my variable is on the left. Now I want to move my constant to the right. So now I'm going to add 11 to both sides. So adding 11, my 11's cancel out, and I'm left with 4x equals negative 19 plus 11, which is negative 8. So now we want to multiply by our denominator or divide by our coefficient. Now, right now, your variable is being multiplied by 4. So to undo multiplication, we will now divide by 4 on both sides. So my 4's cancel out. I'm now left with x equals negative 8 divided by 4, which is negative 2. Okay, so that's number 5. Let's go ahead and look at number 6. So start off by drawing a line through your equal sign. We have 6y plus 12 equals negative 2y plus 10. So step 1 tells us to move the smaller variable to one side. So my variables, I have 6y and negative 2y. Which one is smaller? Negative 2 is smaller than 6. So I need to move this over. So since this is a negative right now, to move it over, I'm going to add 2y. Now what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now make sure whenever you move 2y, you're moving it and you're adding it to your variable and not your constant. Because remember, you can only combine things that look alike. So here, your 2y's cancel out, and you're left with 10 equals 6y plus 2y, which is 8y, and then bring down the 12. Okay, so now we want to move our constants to the other side. So my variables are on the left, my constants need to be on the right. So right now my constant is 12 and it's being added to my variable. So to undo this, I need to subtract by 12 on both sides. So here this cancels out. I'm left with 8y equals 10 minus 12, which is negative 2. So now I have a coefficient of 8. So 8y equals negative 2. So right now your variable and your coefficient are multiplying each other. So here we either want to multiply by our denominator or divide by our coefficient. So since my variable is being multiplied by 8, I want to undo this and I want to divide by 8. So here we see that y equals negative 2 over 8. But whenever you do have a fraction, as your answer, you need to put that in your calculator to simplify. So opening up your calculator, you're just going to type in control divide, negative 2 on the top, and then 8 on the bottom. And here it simplifies to negative 1 over 4. So here, y equals negative 1 over 4. Whenever your answer choice is a fraction, you need to make sure it is simplified. So again, here you're left with y equals negative 1 over 4. So now let's go ahead and look up at number 7. Start off by drawing a line through your equal sign. Now before we can do step 1, which is to move our smaller variable to one side, we need to do the distributive property. We see parentheses. So here 3 times m is 3m, and 3 times 7 is 21. And this equals, again, I have another set of parentheses, so 6 times m is 6m, and 6 times 2 equals 12. So now we can go ahead and go on to step 1. where it tells us to move our smaller variable to one side. So the two variables I have are 3m and 6m. 3 is smaller than 6, so I need to move it to the other side. So right now, 3 is positive. So to move it over, I'm going to subtract it. So here this cancels out, and I'm left with 21 equals 6m minus 3m, which is 3m. And I'm going to bring down the 12. So now step 2 tells us to move our constants to the other side. So here I have 12 being added to my variable. So I want to undo this and move it over. So I'm now going to subtract 12 to both sides. Here this cancels out. I'm left with 3m equals 21 minus 12, which is a positive 9. So now step 3 tells us to multiply by our denominator or divide by our coefficient. So right now, looking at your variable, 3 is multiplying m. So I want to do the opposite of multiplication, and I want to divide by 3 on both sides. So dividing by 3, your 3's cancel out. You're left with m equals 9 divided by 3, which equals 3. So here m equals 3. Okay. Lastly, let's go ahead and look at number 8. So again, before we can get to our steps, we have to take care of any distribution and combining like terms. So to start off by drawing a line through your equal sign. So step 1 was to distribute. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 5 is 10. And then you want to bring down the minus 3. And this equals. Now remember here, you have a negative sign in front of your parentheses. Since we're distributing here, remember that this is a negative 1. So negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times a positive 1 is a negative 1. And then you're going to bring down the plus 1. So before we can move anything over, we need to simplify by combining like terms. So here, if you notice, it is already grouped for us. So here I cannot group 2x with anything, or combine 2x with anything. And now we have 10 minus 3, which simplifies to 7. And this is equal to negative 2x. There's nothing else on this side, so we're going to bring it down. And if I have negative 1 plus 1, this cancels each other out. So that's what I'm left with. So now step 1 tells us to move the smaller variable to one side. So my two variables are 2x and negative 2x. Negative 2 is smaller than 2x, so I'm going to move it over to the left side. So I'm going to add 2x. So 2x plus 2x is 4x. And then I'm going to bring down the 7, and this cancels out, so you're left with 0 on the right-hand side. But now step 2 tells us we want to move our constant over to the other side. So here I have 7 being added to my variable. So I want to undo this, and I want to subtract 7 on both sides. So subtracting 7, this cancels out, and I'm left with 4x equals 0 minus 7, which is negative 7. So now our last step is going to be to divide by our coefficient, because our variable and our coefficient are multiplying each other. So I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. My 4's cancel out, and I'm left with x equals negative 7 over 4. Now, again, I always suggest that you check, I always suggest that is as simplified as it can get. So control divide, negative 7 on top and 4 on the bottom. And here it still returns negative 7 over 4. So negative 7 over 4 is as simplified of a fraction as it gets. So that was solving equations with variables on both sides.